ever worried that you might be the cool kid? You wear the latest fashions on top of all the trends. Or have you ever worried you were too much in the mainstream, always so generic, more normal than your friends? Well, we've devised a test to put to rest your fears. There's no need to panic if you lend us your ears. Tonight you can't sleep easy after all that you've heard, 'cause if you like the show, then you're probably a nerd. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all. It's Canon with
the one and only
boys. So Canon, it's Canon, it's all. In Canon.
This special episode of the It Canon podcast. You know, from time to time we like to throw in a special episode, and this is one of those times. On today's episode, as always, I am joined by Phil.
Hello.
So this week, this weekend I should say, it's been a long weekend. A lot of people have been waiting in line. A lot of people have been grocery store shopping, waiting in line, liquor store shopping, waiting in line, going to the pharmacy, waiting in line. Seems to be the new normal. So we actually have lined up an awesome guest for later, and that is Mic Valencia of W8'ting, soon to be the W8'ting app, the W8'ting podcast, etc., etc. Can't wait to have a chat with him and kind of see how he started, what he's doing, and what he plans to do. But before we go there, Phil, upon reflection after our show over the weekend, do you have any additional thoughts before we jump to the interview?
Well, I guess really want to shout out to everybody out there and wish them a happy Victoria Day in Canada. And as well, I think we forgot the weekend before, just because I know our lives were busy. There was a happy Mother's Day, because there's lots of geek moms out there. So, just wanting to shout that out, given the chance right now. And yeah, otherwise, it seems like this new world order, this new way of living with the waiting in line and new challenges when you can't go to the cottage all weekend, right, because of the limitations. I think that it's really great that we're going to talk to somebody to explore what kind of technology we can leverage to make things better for us all.
And that's exactly it. Technology isn't always bad. It isn't always scary. Sometimes it can be used for good, and this is a perfect example of that. However, you got to be careful when you start throwing words like New World Order out there.
True enough. I just wanted to reach for something to get a response.
Exactly. Well, you got my response. That's for damn sure. But, all right. Anyways, without further ado, here's the interview with Mic Valencia. Enjoy. In a world where we wait in line for just about everything, over the past few years, people have been waiting in line for their latest toys, the latest movie, the latest gizmo, the latest phone, the latest anything, the latest food item. Really? Food. Well, that's all right. In today's world, we've been waiting in line for getting into grocery stores, liquor stores, banks. What a world we live in today. But in that industry, there have been many disruptors, and one of those disruptors is by our next guest. We are now joined by Mic Valencia of the W8'ting app.
Hello,
hey,
everyone.
Mike, welcome to the show.
I really like the fact that you didn't mention toilet paper.
Well,
we are lining up for toilet paper nowadays.
I know. I really should have, but you know what? It's one of those things that it's so pathetic. I don't want anyone in this world to remember that that's what we were actually lining up for. But at the same time, it is what it is, right?
It's like if aliens come and they will think, okay, like we should just cut their water supplies, no, they're going to cut their toilet paper, and then the whole world is going to collapse.
It's one of those things, like of all things that you could have honestly lined up for. It still boggles my mind. But you know what? But that's what panic buying is. You just, people are freaking out and they're rushing to the store and getting the thing that you would never guess. Started off as toilet paper and then moved on to hair products. Go figure, right? So, wait time. It's people have seen this. You've been around. You even host your own podcast, the Wait Time podcast, and it's about just that: waiting in line, waiting time. How do you pass the time when you wait? Tell us about Wait Time.
So, well, it all started with a silly experiment, to be honest. It was a Saturday, and as you know, weekends is prime time for lines because some people still are working from home. So their weekends are usually the time where they go out to do the big shopping. And I'm very fortunate that I live in front of a liquor store. I'm not going to mention the name, but it's one of the provincial stores. And I started noticing that Friday night, Saturday was party central, like literally party central, of course, keeping the distance because everyone was in good mood. There were people chatting, something that you will never see otherwise. And the reason why they were in the parking lot was because the stores had to keep their physical distance. And that means that the capacity that they were created for also was reduced. And the other thing that is very important when you analyze the lines is that they look longer than they actually are because you have to keep the 2 meters separation that before you wouldn't. So I started taking pictures and said, hey, it's 5:30. Right now the LCBO is booming. Oh, I said that. Oops. And then the store is booming. So you should get going because in 30 minutes, it's going to close. Remember that there's a lot of information being updated by the minute and different, like just to make a reference, right? Like once the rules are a little bit more relaxed, then the schedule changes. So I started keeping everyone informed, and I easily did that weekend 66 followers.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're growing this quite a bit. Do you foresee a big future for this? Obviously, I think, given the status of the world right now, I guess there's a huge need that you foresee. How big can you see this getting?
Yeah, no, and it's very interesting that in less than 3 weeks from those 66, right now we are at 980 and counting. And the cool thing is that there are not robots. They're actually like actual people and actual community, part of the community who really cares about keeping everyone informed, safe, and practicing physical distance. How far it can go? Well, that's the next step, right? Like once we get to a certain amount of followers, and we're right now in developing, we're gonna do an application, but an application not only to provide the wait time, because that's gonna be powered by the community and powered by as well the businesses that are gonna provide the time, but also what to do during that time, right? Like how do you keep yourself entertained? As Boris mentioned it earlier, right? Lines have always been, think of the last time you went to a roller coaster park or when you wanted to get that latest phone. So how to transform the wait experience is what Wait Time is gonna provide a collaboration with the estimated wait time on a line.
Awesome. So, one thing that you mentioned was, it's very community based and, you really rely on the community. How, what type of information are you expecting people to send you and how would they be able to send it to you?
So one of the things I noticed by pure observation was that 99.9999% of the people waiting are looking at their phones, right? That 0.00001%, it probably doesn't exist. Everyone is staring at one point to their phones. And I said, if everyone's checking their phone, if everyone is like browsing through Instagram or other platforms, why don't you just like snap a shot, take a picture, and just tag W8'ting, and you're not only helping your neighbors, but you're helping everyone who's following the account. And that's a little bit of how it started. And correct me if wrong, Phil, but you being in a line this past weekend, were you?
I think everybody has. Yeah, it's pretty much a necessity of life right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like right now, it's been 3-4 weeks since wait time started, but the wait time is not going anywhere. And in the near future, think about the restrictions that are gonna be when you travel by plane, right? Like there conversations of sanitation taking longer than they used to between flights, or checking the temperature, right? So the wait experience is definitely gonna change among so many other experiences.
Yeah, and this is really a pretty holistic view that you have with this app, and just the idea that you're pursuing right now, and just occupying the people while they're in line and being able to inform people. It's just a fantastic thing. There's no regional limitations. Is that what I'm going to understand? So if you're up north, you can start posting the wait time, and you're going to provide those updates for everybody else in that community?
I'm sorry, Phil, I didn't hear you. There's a very low sound for some reason, different from when it was at the beginning.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
No.
I hear you perfectly.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't.
Oh,
and I hear
bizarre.
you very low as well, Boris.
I don't know what to tell you.
Oh, technology. God damn it. Let's just see here.
Yeah, no, the sources are fine.
Yeah, everything is fine.
And
Everything's fine here.
you
Testing,
were very, very good at the beginning. I don't understand why
it just went down.
When you started recording, I think.
I was recording.
Okay, so Phil, sorry about that. If you can do it again.
Sure.
The holistic.
So there's a very holistic view that you have about this app, and filling the time that people are using just standing there waiting, informing others. Are there any regional limitations on this? So if somebody's in a remote part of Ontario or across Canada, they can start submitting data to this, and you're going to start collating that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's one of the big parts of what wait time is. And I was just in a conference before coming to your podcast that now in North America, the farmers are saying that there might be a shortage in meat producing. However, they've been busier than ever. And the reason is because now all the demand is coming very centralized. It's coming in cities like Toronto and other big cities around North America are just concentrating everything. And then the areas that are a little bit more rural or outside the main cities or the main distribution channels are getting affected. So to answer your question, if there has to be like a specific place, people who lives in the city will have more of a wait time than people who just know exactly where there's only one grocery store or one convenience store in 5 or 6 kilometers radius. So that's where it comes a little bit of the community aspect that Boris was mentioning, because this is something that more of like someone who wants to help the neighbors, because usually in small towns or areas that are outside the city, people know each other and there's only like one provider. They're still dialing and say, hey, are you open? Do you still have those the almond milk? I don't know, what are they drinking now? All these new kids.
Exactly. All these kids these days and their fancy milks and cucumber milk and whatnot. One thing, one thing that's really prevalent about this, the wait time concept and queues and whatnot, is because it is community driven. There's always a chance of incorrect data. what do you have in place right now, and what will you have in place in the future in regards to kind of negating false times, false net positives, things like that? Like, or are you just absolutely trusting that, hey, you know, I'm getting the information from Joe down the street. I'm sure hoping Joe is not bullshitting me.
Dang, we're really good, Boris, because this is a question that someone from a technical background or an investor will do, like this type of questions. And of course, we have already evaluated this type of situation. So the first thing is that not even Google, being Google the ubiquitous source of internet, can estimate time. Right? There's several factors that you have to take in consideration, whether that cashier is doing a change of shift or they are sanitizing extra one area. You can always have, or you can also have, only have an estimated time. Okay. So that is first. The second thing is that when the app is developed, it's going to have some sort of security or like double check that you cannot repeat it too often. So that means that it has to match with your location, and also it has to be on a way to collaborate, right? So at the beginning, and I keep mentioning the big ones because they won't even have the data. Everything is constantly changing, right? Like as you mentioned earlier, right? Like in the weekend, the long weekend right now has brought different algorithms, so to speak, in the wait time, right? Like this Saturday wasn't the similar of past Saturday. So even the big ones are just like collecting new information, new data. And right now there's like a lot of like, just like doing like licking your finger and seeing where the wind blows, and based on the community, like you have to trust also the community that everyone's doing their best.
I'm a consumer and I see lots of stuff out there about location and things like that. I would imagine right now through Instagram you're taking people's voluntary information about their location. But when we're talking about an app, how easy is that to get the permissions to actually authenticate location? Is that, I would imagine that's a challenge or something in your cone of consideration when doing this. So
Absolutely.
I'm just curious from a consumer standpoint, how easy is it for a developer to get that type of information from a Google or a Facebook or whatever?
Absolutely. And I think that you also touched a great point, and it's a hot topic right now. It's the privacy and security, right? Apps like Foursquare, Waze, Google Map, all of those apps that we all use have a disclaimer or a terms and conditions at the beginning when you download the app, right? And those are the security, meaning that you are accepting the terms of enable your locations when you use the app. Now, you can use the app without enabling the location, but then you won't have the full benefits of like knowing exactly your area. You can even save maps or an area offline, and which is good, but you're not going to have information in real time. So the same will apply to wait time in that sense. There's very easy, and you probably still have it in some of your apps and you don't know, but it's enable location, right? Sometimes you can customize your phone to enable location at all times, but if you want to save battery, for example, you can only enable it when you open the app, and then you can also disable it in the settings, right? So that's a little bit of like how it's gonna work. And I really like that you also touched the point of like taking the community in it. I have right now so many followers who lived outside grocery stores, outside liquor stores, outside pharmacies, that they're at home, whether you are not working, furlough, or employee, you're working from home. So it takes literally less than 5 seconds to take a picture and then just send it through the message or tagging W8'ting, and you're helping not hundreds but thousands of people who are checking that and that are in the line.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, that community is so important. We talked a little bit about false positives or false negatives. We talked a little bit about privacy concerns. Privacy is a subject that we can go on for hours upon hours upon hours. And clearly you're not limiting yourself to liquor store lines or grocery store lines. You're limiting, like you mentioned earlier, you're also thinking about how the travel industry is going to change and checkpoints and things like that. What type of information are you hoping to get out there to people in an airport, to people at a bus terminal, to people and waiting for their Uber? Like, what type of information, how will they be able to spend their time waiting while using your app? What's going to keep them looking at your app as opposed to, something else or listening to one of our podcasts?
Yeah, no, well, it's like everyone will have different preferences, right? Phil, you might be enjoying last season's reruns of the Toronto FC through video. And Boris, you could be probably listening to its Canon podcast, the first episode. So it depends on what are the options that you want based on your preferences. Of course, this is going to be the first version, and the first version will have the very basic features and a very light one. But in the future is going to be, of course, like you have to do the privacy and accept all the terms and conditions. And we are like, one thing that I can guarantee everyone who uses W8'ting, the app, is that we have a big amount of collaborators from the legal entities, and their specialty is intellectual property and privacy and security. So rest assured that we're going to comply with all the requirements that in Canada, and when it goes to the US and the rest of the world, we're also going to be complying with all the security and privacy terms.
I think that's just amazing with the security stuff and just with the homegrown aspect of it. There's some great data that you're probably going to be able to correlate through the app as well, and be able to share trends with people as well. I think there's a lot of really big upsides for society and people using your app, right? They're really going to drive them to it. Do you have an ETA when you're going to be looking at for the app's release? Mm-hmm. I do love right now the organic nature of just getting on Instagram and doing it. It's absolutely brilliant in its simplicity. I think you should always support that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Phil. And I think that there's no better, and Boris will follow on this too. Whenever you launch a product, there's always a beta market. There's always a beta test. And out of something that came very loose, as a matter of fact, my father-in-law was the one very upset, saying like, oh my God, there's so many lines, we need an app. And then I said, okay, let me just do these pictures. And that's where it all started. Absolutely. The idea of that organically with the Instagram is something that is very free, very easygoing. Like before this podcast, I went live, and there were like a few people already commenting. And the cool thing is that minute or minute and a half that I went live trying to promote its Canon podcast, it's going to stay for 24 hours, right? So when is it going to be ready? The $1 million question. We're working around the clock, and we're very, very well advanced in the solution. Of course, the first solution is going to be providing the basic information in terms of like how long is the line, your location, etc. But big plans in the future. And right now we're also in the different stages of investment and the different parts of like from bootstrapping that we are now to the different seeding funds and rounds that we need in order to support this community initiative that at the end of the day, we really want to keep people safe, right? Like that's going to be always our number one priority. And I think that not only for wait time, but also the supermarkets and all the places that usually have a lot of people, right now it's not about selling. It's about keeping the community safe.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Keeping the community safe, keeping people safe. I think that's one of the most important things that you can do with technology. We've seen technology, can be an amazing thing, but at the other side of the coin, we've all watched Black Mirror. We all know how bad technology can get. We've all watched Terminator. It can be a scary world, but technology can be used for good, and this is a perfect example of that. Enough talking about the future of wait time and the wait time app. Let's talk about today and what and yesterday. What's the funniest, weirdest thing that you've seen personally while doing taking metrics for the app?
Oh my God! Like there's, of course, it went viral actually, and it came to us when there was a person in Alberta in a Costco doing squats and inviting everyone who were lining up to join, right? So just outside my house, I've seen that several times because at the beginning of this pandemic, when all the authorities, including the WHO, were recommending to have like a strict not getting out of your house, only to do the extreme essentials, you were wondering, right? Like, how do I usually go for a walk, or I usually work and walk to work, or like my steps, my physical being, right? Like, how do I do that? And sometimes when you're like standing there, you can do so many things. So that's definitely one. I haven't seen yet someone getting a haircut, but I will be very curious.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, like now everyone's like a hairdresser.
Yeah, everyone's had to learn it on the spot. I've seen a lot of Instagram stories of friends and getting their wives to do their haircuts, or vice versa. A male doing a female's hair, that's grounds for divorce, I'm sure.
Oh.
But
that's danger.
Exactly. But we've all seen it. It's there right now. It's just crazy. I'm sure that's a question I want to pose to our listeners. What's the craziest thing that you have seen? Send it to us. There's many ways that you can send it to us. And the next time that we speak with Mike, we'll for sure touch on some of those stories and anecdotes.
Yeah, and that it's so interesting that this movement has also created a direct channel with the community, because that's what we've been seeing. Like we're very interactive, right? So if you follow W8'ting on Instagram, you're gonna see that yes, we inform, but we're also, like, for example, today it's like the places that are open, or we do some silly surveys. For example, how often are you going now to do groceries before, or like what do you think is the best way to pass your time, right? So the other thing is like the podcast, right? Like this has also evolved into a direct channel with the podcast, and we are going to post the first 3 episodes soon in the platforms, but we'll also keep that live audience very engaged. So if you follow it there, like, it's gonna be like super crazy, and I'm pretty sure that we can join efforts to see your answers. And I think that because you have a big audience of comics experts, that's probably like there's got to be a new form, right? Like I was listening to Phil the other day that he was saying that he was doing like seeing on his iPad, and he has like that experience, right? So imagine all the things that are gonna come out after this. And it's very interesting because topics like this one, and topics like 100 years ago was the Spanish flu, and literally 1 or 2 years after we have this COVID pandemic, it's like the type of topics that we discuss in the Wait Time podcast, because we want to also spin it, same as you are doing it with It's Canon podcast, to a positive, right? Like we have enough of the negative and the scary things that are happening out there. So we want to put just like a touch of light and make everyone feel happy.
I think it's amazing, again, and I commend you for it. Just community involvement, and this concept of looking forward into how to spend that time, and whether it be podcasts or reading. I think I noticed a headline the other day that said Kobo has seen an additional 2 million people join up to their service just for books, right? We're just talking about ebooks and whatnot on their phones. So I think the interactive part is just amazing. And yeah, everybody's got to go out and check out this W8'ting on Instagram and the podcast. Just make sure to support these guys because they're really helping out where we need some help, I think, and where it's just easy for everyone to just be a part of the community.
And that's exactly it right there. It's, we're trying to get a positive spin on things. I've had it with all the negativity for them. Let's try, which is kind of funny considering, who our audience can be, the keyboard warriors, the trolls. But, I try to keep things positive. I try to put a smile on people's face. Like I said, there's so much negativity in the world right now. I just want to show that I can listen to for a few hours and actually have some positivity and having people be happy. It's quite simple. Like Phil said, check out the wait time, W8'ting. They have the Instagram. You can follow them on Twitter. You can join their live podcast every Saturday, 1 p.m. All the platforms. They'll be getting their feed up and running soon. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you very much. And as well, if you want to learn a little bit more about W8'ting, you can check w8'ting.org, and you're going to have a little bit of the info and about what are the plans for the future. What is the media coverage as well? The media has been very supportive into this community idea. And by all means, right? Like we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on TikTok. Even on TikTok. So we have all the channels. The kids nowadays, you got to keep up with those ones because now we as millennials also are driving the world. And we're going to drive and lead the next generation. So it's a big responsibility that we have. And I'm glad to just have the connection with you, Phil and Boris, because you're a big part of that leadership that we need for the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Well, I'm sure that we will cross paths soon. Hopefully I'll see you sooner than that. But, we will for sure touch base in a few months, see what's going on with wait time. And, I hope that the community continues to grow and treats you well. And the best of luck to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the invitation, guys.
So that was the interview. I hope everyone liked it. I for sure had fun conducting it. Phil, this is the first time that you were on the other side of the mic. How did that feel for you?
That's a bit surreal, and it's a lot more difficult than I would have thought. And I just really appreciate all of what they do for the community again, and trying to make the world a better place. That was really great of him to do that. And make sure to go out and subscribe to all of his Twitter feed, YouTube channel, TikTok, and hit him up on Instagram and start sending in those photos and letting people know in your community what's going on as far as access to these vitally important shops like, the grocery store and I guess the liquor store.
That's exactly it. So that's W8'ting, time as in Time. That's their handle for just about all social media. Make sure to give them a follow. Make sure to subscribe. Wait for their, they have a live podcast every Saturday. You can get more info on all their social media. They will be starting a actual podcast feed soon, so you'll be able to listen to previous episodes. They will, and as you heard, they are working on an app. Can't wait for that app to actually come out. Community driven, by the community, for the community, by someone who was literally just looking out their window during the quarantine. So it's kind of amazing how, such a simple concept can turn into, a much bigger community driven, positive story, which is just fantastic to actually get, during bleak times. It's good that, we can always get something like that, especially as I mentioned, technology can be used for evil. There's enough conspiracy theories, and some of them aren't just theories, some of them are real, but there's just enough stories out there about bad technology. So it's always good to highlight some of this positive stuff.
And hey, while you're standing in line, be sure to hit up the It's Canon podcast, and also fire us up on social media, and let us know what you like, what you don't like, anything, what you want to talk about, what you'd see future coverage to be. It's Canon podcast. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us Instagram. You can find us everywhere where you get podcasts.
That's perfectly it. We talk about everything, not just comic books anymore. We talk about we talk about conspiracy theories. We talk about sports. We'll talk about comics. We'll talk about movies. We'll talk about entertainment. We'll talk about lineups. And Phil, do you know what the best part of it all is?
That I'm not bored while I'm lining up.
And it's all in canon.
Oh yes, it's all in canon, of course. What isn't?
I was gonna say previous incarnations of this show, but I'm not gonna go there yet. Anywho, but as always, I want to thank all of our listeners, past, present, and future listeners. Phil, I want to thank you for, putting up with me. It's we've had to do that for a few years, but continuing to do so, and everything. And Mike, thank you so much for joining us this week, giving us your time. I know you're super busy trying to get wait time out there and out the door and lining up investors and all that fun stuff. But thank you so much again for joining us. And as always, we will be back for another episode of the It's Canon podcast. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Is that the throw that you were looking for me for?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. All right.
I wasn't sure. I'm like, did I fucking shit my pants on the last episode?
Nope. Not at all. I want to totally use that for the fucking intro.